What's up, everybody? This is Donnie Kwak of TheRinger.com. I'm here with my Ringer colleagues, Justin Charity.
Yeah.
And Hannah Giorgis.
Hey, hey.
And we are here today to discuss the classic rewatchable movie, Friday. Guys, I know you don't smoke weed. I know this. But I'm going to get you high today. It's Friday, you ain't got no job, and you ain't got shit to do.
How the hell you gonna get fired on your day off?
So you gonna loan me the money or not?
I wouldn't feel comfortable lending you $200 without a job.
If I was working, I wouldn't need $200.
Exactly.
Now, Dana told me about that big snake situation.
Big worm.
Big worm, big hole, big... I don't give a damn!
Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Bernie Mac, Johnny Witherspoon, Tiny Zeus Lister, and Mia Long. Friday.
Don't ever come by here. Okay?
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From the snacks you choose to the settings on your TV, you personalize every aspect of your viewing experience because it's better that way. That's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer availability and eligibility may vary. This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
So, Justin, Hannah, Friday.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about this movie.
Let's talk about it. This is, of course, the movie written by Ice Cube along with DJ Pooh, directed by F. Gary Gray.
Yes.
Who's also in the movie, a cameo. We'll get to that. The movie came out in April of 1995.
A good year.
A good year, a great year for music. It was 3 years after the L.A. riots. And in those years prior to 1995, we saw a lot of depictions of South Central Los Angeles, from Boys in the Hood, The Menace to Society. But those depictions, for the most part, were sort of the crime and gangster side.
Like Mad Dyer depictions.
Mad
Right.
Dyer, nihilistic.
Right. Somebody's beloved child always died.
A little
Right.
preachy. Yeah, and you were either like the hardest of hardcore gangbanger or like a total square, like Cuba and Boys in the Hood.
Right.
But there
Cuba
wasn't
and everything.
there wasn't exactly like a rich tapestry of characters. It was like a kind of a limited or one-dimensional depiction. So into that mix comes Friday. And as I mentioned, it was written by Ice Cube, who at the time was not necessarily seen as, or not seen at all as a comedic persona. I mean, like, this is after his fourth solo album. It was The Predator, but he barely even smiled at that point in 1995.
Yeah.
I mean, like...
At that point, it feels like Ice Cube in the public imagination was him on the cover of America's Most Wanted, where he's doing he's cracking his knuckles.
Jerry
and he has
curl.
that grimace.
Right.
And that's the thing, like, Friday is the movie where that grimace sort of falls away a little bit.
Right, and his acting debut was Boys in the Hood, and he had been in a couple movies after that, but I think he was still largely associated with that Jerry curl, NWA, never smiling, kind of hardcore persona. So it was kind of a surprise, I think, for him to write a script like this.
Yeah, I think you'd see Friday definitely functions as both sort of, not a rehabilitation, but like a different lens through which to view both Ice Cube and the Hood. And that's like, he talks about that in, the way that he discusses how this came to be. Right.
And so, as we mentioned, he debuted in Boys in the Hood and appeared, I think, in like Trespass and a couple other crappy movies. And according to interviews, he was getting scripts, but they all sucked. So he decided to write his own. And he wanted to make a comedic version of the Hood movie that showed a more positive side of South Central. So he had inspirations like Car Wash and Uptown Saturday Night, films like that, as well as like In Living Color, House Party, which were big at the time. So it was meant to be like a day in the life buddy movie in the vein of Cheech and Chong.
I'm not the biggest fan of stoner movies, with the exception of Friday, which is the transcendental stoner movie as far as I'm concerned.
In the Venn diagram of like stoner movie and then like classic black film is where this movie falls.
Yeah.
And like Half Baked is very much on the other side, on the stoner side of it.
I think that's a fair point.
Okay.
In the oral history for Friday, actually, the oral history, which was on Complex, Cube said, quote, "Everybody was looking at our neighborhood like it was hell on earth, like the worst place you can grow up in America." And I'm like, why? I didn't see it all that way. I knew it was crazy around where I grew up, but we all had fun in the hood.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it alludes back to what we were talking about, how Menace, Boys in the Hood, even earlier than that, Colors, all showed Compton and South Central as these really scary places.
Right.
In reality, normal people live in the hood. And I think that from the opening credits, you can kind of establish that, you know, this is a normal family that just happens to live in a neighborhood associated with gang violence.
Right.
I mean, maybe you can speak to that, Justin. Like, from the opening, as soon as, you know, like, the way they introduce the family, it's kind of like feels lived in and real.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, like, the first argument between Craig and his father, played by John Witherspoon, is about, like, it's like Craig basically wants to eat all the cereal in the house, but there's no milk in the fridge, he uses all the milk.
Every time I come in the kitchen, you in the kitchen. In the goddamn refrigerator, eating up all the food, all the chicken, all the pig feet, all the collard green, all the hog maws. I want to eat some of them chitlin. I love pig feet.
And his father's complaining about
I mean,
how he eats all the
the
cereal.
big ass orange bowl.
Right. He's eating it out of a mixing bowl. He's eating cereal out of a mixing bowl. His father's nagging him for eating all the food in the refrigerator. You know, it is very, it's this very normalized sort of, there's a lot of levity that's suddenly like pumped into this genre that you're right. Like before that, it seems like it's just so dire and about people dying and having to sell drugs or go to prison. And
yeah, I think it's strange how remarkable this movie was when it came out, right? Like it seems sort of easy, or it seems obvious that you would have a movie about black people, about black and Latino people in the hood, and that they would just be people, you know? But that's kind of not the landscape they were coming into. And, you know, Regina King in the BuzzFeed oral history, it said, you know those people, you are those people. And she said, I think as great as the Boys in the Hood and Menace Society was, they only reference a small part of neighborhood life.
Right. Shout out to Regina King too. I mean,
yes.
Small details in the beginning that immediately kind of signal that this is, you know, this movie pays attention to this stuff. Is Regina King like sleeping upright?
So she does cut her hair. Right. Which, listen, I have spent many a night sleeping like that. So I saw that and I was like, ooh, painful.
But while we're talking about the positivity, it's sort of, I would actually describe Friday as a kind of utopian hood comedy. The one thing that I always notice watching this movie is that even though this is a movie where a drive-by shooting happens at one point, there's never a shot of a police car or a police officer in this movie.
That's an interesting point, or white people for that matter.
Right. And so in the sense of like, it's not just that this is a hood movie that's not about, oh man, life in the hood is terrible and you could only grow up to resent the people you're surrounded by and want to get out. It's like, you know, there are people fighting. People owe each other money in this movie, and they fight it out. But it's sort of, there's never this moment where police besiege like this street and sort of break everybody up and victimize people. Like it's sort of a very contained comedy.
Right. Although, you know, there is a gun pulled, even if it's for play, like in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Very Chekhov's gun.
Right.
So, you know, let's get into the plot a little bit. It's pretty low stakes, you know, as far as plots go. The narrative is basically an excuse for Chris Tucker as Smokey and Ice Cube as Craig to sit in the front porch of Craig's house and just watch all these neighborhood characters come to and fro. There is an actual sort of money scheme, I guess you could say. There's like $200 owed to Smokey's, to a drug dealer named Big Worm, who Smokey sells drugs for. But that isn't even introduced until like about 45 minutes into it. So it's really just these two guys cracking wise. I mean, do you guys feel like plot-wise that this movie's lacking at all, or do you think?
No, if anything, I actually think it pulls a neat trick, which is that when Craig and his father are arguing in the beginning of the movie about Craig eating all the food in the house and Craig having gotten fired on his day off, Craig basically gets fired on a Thursday for stealing boxes from his job.
Oh, right.
Allegedly. Right. But it's sort of the way that scene is written, it's sort of John Witherspoon over and over again saying, okay, so today you are going to go out and find a job. And it feels like that it's setting the groundwork for you to think of like, oh, this is a movie where Craig is going to have to spend the day finding a job.
That's a good point.
And everything goes awry.
That's actually the first part of the plot.
Right.
Craig lost his job on a Thursday. He lost his job on his day off.
Right.
It's Friday and he needs a new job.
Right. And so when Chris Tucker as Smokey comes in later into the 10 minutes into the movie, it's interesting that he sort of hijacks the plot and is like, no. Scrap that premise. This is a movie about me trying to get you high.
Right.
It doesn't start like that. It starts making you think that it's a movie about a job hunt, and then Chris Tucker ruins it. And it's like, no, I'm resetting this movie to be about me trying to make you smoke weed for the first time.
I mean, we're not picking nits yet, but I feel like the whole $200 to Big Worm, it doesn't feel like a particularly urgent or necessary plot device.
I'm gonna be here 10 o'clock on the dot, not 10:03, not 10:36. If you ain't got my money or my bud, I'm killing you and him.
Donnie, how far did $200 get you in 1995? I don't remember. I was pretty young. How far did $200 get you in 1995?
I don't know that it's necessary, but it brings us some amazing lines and some amazing points of confrontation. And just like the opportunity to see Faison Love with his hair curlers, I'll take it. Like, I don't care if it feels false. Like, it's fine for me.
And listeners, you should know that Hannah's my editor. So Hannah is the Big Worm to my Smokey. So this makes this podcast episode really special for me.
She said playing with my deadlines is like playing with my emotions.
It is. It absolutely is. And I'm glad that we've established this for the record.
So you bring up Smokey. Of course, we got to talk about Chris Tucker, who, before he appeared in Friday, was basically a Def Comedy Jam comedian and had been in House Party 3. He was a bit part. We're going to talk about who won the movie, and no spoilers, I guess, but Chris Tucker kind of, as soon as he appears on screen, just dominates everyone's attention.
And you know this, man.
Most of his scenes in the movie, he's sitting next to Craig. He's sitting next to Ice Cube. And it's, as a dynamic duo, they could not seem like two more different people. And that contrast really works. Like, Chris Tucker is doing so much heavy lifting.
And it's the root of every buddy comedy, right? You got the straight man.
Right.
Cube is definitely the straight man.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way that Craig and Smokey interact, it's like Craig is such a relatable character. And I don't know if this is accurate or not, but the way I viewed it is like O'Shea Jackson, who is Ice Cube, is actually in real life probably more like Craig than he is like Ice Cube or NWA. And like, I think Friday felt so lived in and authentic because I think it's true. I mean, not that NWA felt inauthentic. I just think it overall shows that O'Shea Jackson is a masterful storyteller.
Right, and a complex human being, right? And so I think one of the most interesting things about this movie for me is that in interviews he said like 65% of this was scripted and like a lot of this was ad-libbed.
Right.
And a lot of it was about trusting the cast and trusting especially people like Chris Tucker. Like, there's no way you can script half of the stuff that Chris Tucker says and does and the way that his body moves. And you feel that with Cube too. Like, he's kind of just running with it and clearly wasn't precious with his words, right? Like,
and as you're saying, as far as like buddies go, it was like the perfect chemistry. Like, you have friends like this. You know, Smokey's the guy that's always going to get you into some shit. I mean, I think Craig at some point says, like, you always put me in the middle of shit. And that's basically how their relationship goes throughout the film.
An important thing about that, though, is that I think with somebody other than Chris Tucker doing this, if somebody other than Chris Tucker were doing that sort of heightened, very like loose body, yappy comedy, you would maybe look at that person in Ice Cube and be like, how are these two people friends?
Right,
like, why would they even hang out? But you just sort of, it makes sense.
Right.
You look at Craig and Smokey, and even though Smokey clearly gets on Craig's nerves, their relationship totally makes sense. It's just like two dudes from the neighborhood who are relatively like peaceful people.
I mean, the chemistry, from the moment they appear on screen together, you feel like they've spent their whole lives together.
Right.
Like, it's seamless. Like, it feels natural, and you feel like these guys have been like friends but bickering since they were like, you know, young. And so,
and also that they've hung around that house. Like,
Right.
it's specifically that they just feel, you look at them and you look at their body chemistry, And it's like, yeah, they've probably sat on this porch in these two exact hand-me-down, broke-ass looking chairs for years of their life together.
Right.
They just look so at home.
Right. And the sense that, like, you know, Smokey trying to get Craig high isn't like, all right, I'm trying to get you into some trouble. Like, I want you to go down a wrong path. It's like, no, dude, like, I know you're stressed. And, like, this is a thing that I want to help you out. And, like, even if it's not something you want that much, and even if it's something that you're kind of protesting and going to bicker with me about, like, I still have your best interests at heart here. You feel that sort of, like, genuine, if also kind of misguided sentiment definitely coming through clearly.
Right. So we have Craig and the Jones family, we have Smokey, and we're about to talk about a bunch of the other characters that come in and out. But first, I want to talk about quickly some of the early critical reception of this film. Although it's overall, I think, was favorably received even back in 95. There were two reviews that stood out. I'm just going to read them real quick. Gene Siskel, R.I.P. This is a very 95 type review. Quote, for all of the shouting, mugging, and rap music, a surprisingly dull comic yarn. Colorful characters abound, but nothing ties them together. Talk about some old man shit. I knew the picture was in trouble when its first gag involved an old lady spewing obscenities. I think it's like the Jehovah's Witness. Which is actually when I first thought it was going to be funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Karen James of the New York Times wrote, the humor is often lame. The film's weakness is Mr. Tucker, whose exaggerated expressions and line readings become annoying.
Oh, my God.
I know. I was shocked, too.
Well, okay, I'm not shocked to hear Chris Tucker described as annoying.
Yeah.
Right.
But the whole thing is that he metabolizes annoying as a joyful.
That's his character.
Yeah, that's who he is just in all Chris Tucker characters. He's annoying, but he makes that work as a characterization.
Yeah.
What kind of humor was she into this? She said it's lame. What was she into?
You know,
I would love to know what humor she
This is definitely not to sort of call like their, you know, critical prowess into question by any means, but I think the thing that comes together for me thinking about those two reviews is it like, do these characters feel like foreign or like, you know, just unrealistic to you in a certain way? Like if you think that old women who happen to be Jehovah's Witnesses who are knocking on every door and encountering people like Smokey, people like Craig might not curse, like that seems far-fetched to you, then like maybe there's something else happening here.
Right. And that speaks to Friday being kind of, you know, a new thing. Like,
right.
You know, maybe Karen James was more readily willing to accept O-Dog, you know, or Doughboy.
Right.
You know? But joke's on you, Karen, because Chris Tucker ended up becoming a fucking megastar after this movie. Actually, after this movie, and then Rush Hour, and then Rush Hour 2, and then Rush Hour 3. And actually his gargantuan success.
You just skipped over the best Chris Tucker
Fifth
role.
Element.
Thank you!
Fuck out of here.
Johnny knows me.
I don't know about that.
I do know you, Charity, but you know we'll get to Chris Tucker getting so big that he didn't ever appear in another Friday movie, of which there are 3. But then you know we're also going to talk about Felicia, Izal, Debo, of course. How could I forget Debo? Red.
You forgot Debo.
Red.
Red, yeah.
So on and so forth. But that's a segue into casting what ifs. The script was originally written with DJ Pooh as Smokey, but apparently New Line wouldn't sign off as Pooh because he wasn't a big enough star, which I think was a smart move.
Yep.
As we mentioned, Chris Tucker was not yet established, but on the rise. Cube auditioned him, and the rest is history. DJ Pooh as Smokey, not going to work, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No shit.
Although, he did kill it as Red.
Pop's tripping, man. You want me to ask for my bike back? You know I wouldn't trip. What bike? The beach cruiser. The one I let you use a couple of weeks ago. The one I've been asking you about.
Yes, a lovely part for him.
He did, the way he walked back to the car.
Yeah. He sort of jangles back to the...
Also considered for Smokey, apparently, Tommy Davidson from In Living Color and Chris Rock.
Chris Rock? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Chris Rock's way too New York, I think.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Chris Rock was more famous than Chris Tucker at the time in 95, but to think of him as Smokey, it just doesn't compute.
Yeah, I would find Chris Rock in this role annoying. And I just think about like even the physical comedy of Chris Tucker in this movie, and like watching Chris Rock do that to me would be like a little uncomfortable.
It would look like overacting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like maybe it's an age thing. Like I think we can, you know, I'm not sure the exact difference between the two of them, but like just Chris Tucker feels like a younger, more youthful, more like exuberant spirit to me in a way that like Chris Rock sometimes can be like hardened.
Okay, so Tommy Davidson also was supposed to be the crackhead Izal. And then just another casting note about Felicia. The woman who plays Felicia is Angela Means, and apparently she said her agents wanted her to pass on the part because she's so pretty and she should have played the pretty girl, which, fair.
Yeah, she is beautiful.
We mentioned earlier, this isn't actually a rewatchables category, but I just made it. It's called Cameo Corner. Blink or you missed him. You mentioned F. Gary Gray, the director.
Who looks like Chance the Rapper.
Absolutely does.
Watch the movie now. F. Gary Gray bears an uncanny resemblance to Chance the Rapper.
Like older. Well, actually, you know what? We should mention this, that what's remarkable about the film, well, many things are remarkable about the film, but one of the things is that all of these guys, Cube, Tucker, F. Gary Gray, the director, they're like in their early 20s.
Yeah.
You know, like I think Chris Tucker was 23. Cube and F. Gary Gray were like 24 or 25. So it's like, this is all young people, the output of young creative people. So anyway, F. Gary Gray, yes. I don't think he looks like Chance, but he's mopping up in the deli scene. Megan Good, blink if you missed her. She appears in 2 scenes, I think, like in the beginning and then the ice cream truck scene with Big Worm.
Right.
Michael Clark Duncan, R.I.P., is shooting dice when in the red knockout scene. You guys saw him?
I've never...
You know Michael Clark.
I know what he looks like.
Green Mile.
Yeah.
I've never noticed him. You mean the scene where they're shooting craps on the sidewalk when Red and
Yep.
yeah.
He's in it for like a second, and apparently he wanted a speaking
I blinked
role.
and I missed him.
And then finally in the drive-by, who's the shooter? Dub C.
Oh, no.
But it's so dark in that scene. How would you recognize anyone?
Because I know my rappers. Man.
All right, Donnie. All right.
I verified it.
This is like the Donnie flexing section.
Oh my god.
I'm also old.
That music cue, by the way, is great.
Pay your dues. Low profile.
Yeah, so one thing I thought about watching this movie is Anna Maria Horsford is Mrs. Jones, right? And she plays this like kind of comedic, but like also like, you know, like strict mother to Craig. And the thing is, but it's still a comedic role, right? And so I watched this again this weekend, and I was just thinking like an actress who I feel like doesn't get enough roles to do comedic stuff and to play like motherly and comedic roles is Viola Davis. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, what would this scene look like? And what would it have meant for Viola Davis to have been in this movie in 1995?
It's a real Viola Davis vibe.
Yes,
I totally get where you're coming from.
It is. And like, but with a little bit more range to like step into the comedic role, because I feel like Viola is always pushed into like the intense, like emotional crying.
So you're saying for like a Friday reboot, maybe?
What would this movie have looked like with her in that role? Like,
Right.
I wonder frequently.
Right. Would she have been old enough 20 years ago, though?
I feel like she could have made it happen.
Yeah. Shout out Anna Maria Horsford, who was in Amen.
Oh, wow. I have not watched an episode of Amen in a very long
Nope,
time.
I cannot tell you.
Yeah, she was in
What is
Amen.
the syndication situation for Amen? Let's talk about
That
it.
show's kind of been lost to time, actually.
Well, not in my heart.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jared, keeping it alive.
Let's move on to the most rewatchable scene. And I think it's kind of difficult in some ways to pluck one single rewatchable scene because I think the first hour is basically a rewatchable hour. But for the sake of the podcast, I chose some and you guys can discuss. Craig getting high.
Oh, yeah. That's the one.
It's kind of like you're waiting the whole movie for Craig to finally take a puff, and he finally gets high.
It's my shit. I can do whatever I want to do. Stop hitting it so hard. Hold up, you fucking up the rotation. Puff, puff, give. Puff, puff, give.
So that's a scene. Smokey's Angel Dust flashback with the essays is kind of funny, right? People remember that.
A little problematic.
A little problematic, maybe. Or we can.
We'll get into that.
Red getting his chain snatched by Debo.
Yes.
Is like the classic bully Debo.
My grandmama gave me that chain.
Or just when they're like, just when Debo approaches, tucking it, like taking off their chains.
And the thing is, it's bad for him the moment he's like, I just tucked mine in. Because like Smokey like rips his off and puts it in his back pocket. And Red is just like, I just tucked mine in. And you're like, oh.
It's not thorough at all, sir.
Bernie Mac scene. Bernie Mac as the
R.I.P.
pastor. By Felicia has obviously become super famous.
The hell on, Felicia. I'm gonna remember that. Remember it. Write it down. Take a picture. I don't give a fuck. Craig.
Bye, Felicia.
Any other scenes maybe to nominate there?
I mean, I'm with you. I think it's difficult because the first hour of the movie really is like a procession of immaculate character bits,
Right.
but you don't really break them down into scenes because they basically
blend
all happen
together.
on the stoop.
Right.
And it's a
Right.
movie that happens over the course of a day.
Right.
So
Right.
it doesn't feel like, okay, scene A is over, now this is scene B.
Right.
It feels like, it's just like Smokey and Craig roasting people.
Totally.
Right. And I think that there are like amazing quotes from this, but like I wouldn't call You Ain't Gotta Lie, Craig the most rewatchable scene.
Right.
It's just like a thing that you pull out and that kind of sticks with you. But like that scene itself is what, 15 seconds long, you
Yeah.
know? So like
Totally. It's like those are like memorable lines, not necessarily rewatchable scenes. But again, I think everything is pretty much rewatchable. You said
Right.
the angel dust thing might have been a little.
yeah, we can get into that in a minute.
Okay. You want to get into it now? Like-
Well, I think the reason why Craig getting high works it's not just because the movie and Smokey set up the idea that like you're waiting for Craig to finally get high. He's so stressed out and tense, you're waiting for him to get high. But it's also like once he starts smoking, the way Cube plays that
Right.
and his body language shift
Right. The
and
languor.
his like chuckling,
Yeah.
like when he's offering to make the Kool-Aid, it's just like he doesn't overplay it.
Right,
It's
right.
very for a character who again Craig's already the straight man in the movie,
Right.
and so it'd be weird if he overplayed it and he was all of a sudden like Smokey running in
exactly.
front of a car with no clothes. You know what I
Right.
mean? Instead, it's these very subtle shifts of him just seeming like he's saying these weird non sequiturs and being kind of. He's just chuckling a lot.
But again, that's not even a scene. It's like a progression that takes place
Right.
over like 15 minutes.
right. And it's also remarkable because, like you said at the top of the podcast, it's like it's Ice Cube, and you're so used to Ice Cube scowling at you,
Right.
And all of a sudden, you're in this movie, and
He's
little
like vulnerable.
giddy.
He's like vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know?
and he's goofy vulnerable. He's not
Yeah.
scared. He's not
Yeah.
shook. He's just like.
And they
He's
play.
loose.
I think they play Cypress Hill the moment he like. It's a little on the nose. Right? My vote goes for Red getting his chain snatched by Debo, just because it's like there's a lot of moving parts in that scene,
Yeah.
and there's like you get Debo, you get Red's cameo, which is good, and Cube and Smoker reacting to Debo.
What's up, y'all? What's up, Red? Thanks for the bite. What you got on my 40, homie?
I thought you had $200.
I do. But I want to spend Red's money. I'm broke.
That's my vote.
All right. I'm voting for the Craig scene. And not even because of Craig, but because of Smokey's dancing specifically. Like these Michael Jackson ass moves.
Yeah. Is that the beginning of Chris Tucker basically saying, in every single movie or public appearance, I will do Michael Jackson moonwalk?
I don't know, but I hope that it is.
You know what? It got him in a Michael Jackson video.
I mean,
Yeah. So I think that like clearly to many other people was very rewatchable to the extent that they wanted to watch it in other places. So therefore, it wins for me.
Charity, you just gonna say
I'm
Craig getting
voting
high.
with you of Craig. I mean, of Red getting his chain
Wow.
snatched.
Okay. I'll stand alone. That's fine.
Because it's the moving parts, and they're like the core moving parts of the movie, and they set up the end game of the movie, and I just love Debo so much.
Debo. Let's talk for a second about Debo. Like Tiny Lister, was known as a wrestler, I guess, where he was in the WWE. Shout out to Shoemaker, and appeared in a Hulk Hogan movie called No Holds Barred. So he was actually one of the more famous people next to Ice Cube to appear in the film. But I mean, Debo is one of those characters that's just indelible. Like I've seen interviews with Tiny Lister since, and he is just Debo. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's him.
Is it really that precisely Debo? He's just like a bully who just takes people's money and is rude.
Well, apparently the behind the scenes thing, he's like, as many giant people are, he's very gentle and kind of sweet and getting joked on all the time. But he's a huge guy with a blind in one eye that kind of just lumbers in and out of the movie and creates havoc. And shout out Tiny Lister and Debo. All right, so let's move on to what aged the best. I have a couple nominees, and you guys are free to nominate. F. Gary Gray's career, because after this, he may set it off. The Negotiator, Italian Job, I'm skipping some, but then Straight Outta Compton, Fate of the Furious, Box Office Mojo, lit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so clothing in the movie
Oh, okay.
has aged well, surprisingly, right?
All right.
Or maybe not surprisingly, because 90s is big now, but Craig's flannel, timeless. Khakis, Chucks, plain T-shirt.
Well, one thing, the one gear.
Dookie braids.
Well, first of all,
is it not timeless?
Yeah, Nia Long's athletic gear ages very well.
So my nominee for
Nia
this
Long.
is Nia Long.
Nia Long has the
actually.
Ivy Park collection in Friday for some reason.
Yeah, my
we haven't
nominee
even
for
said
this
Nia Long yet.
is
Jesus.
Nia Long, and also Regina King, but specifically Nia Long. I implore you to look up a picture of Nia Long in 1995 and one in 2017, and just look at them next to each other and tell me that there is 22 years between those, and you won't believe it. It's ridiculous.
I mean, Nia Long straight up lights up the screen the moment she comes
Absolutely.
in. It's like, it's amazing, actually. So actually, Nia Long wins. I didn't even have her down.
Great.
But
Yes.
Agreed?
Yeah, it's weird because in the beginning of the movie, rewatching it the past couple of days, I watched it twice in the past couple of days, and it sort of sets her up as somebody who, I mean, her first shot is a slow-mo shot of her running and Craig and Smokey staring at her. And a worse movie would sort of just have her stuck with that and catcalling for the rest of the movie. But she gets the blackout on Debo at one point. Yeah. That's like the main.
Right.
All right, so Nia Long wins what age the best, and for what age the worst, there's the obvious analog phones, beepers, Craig's mom saying, "I know it's her because I star 69." You guys know what star 69 is.
Yes,
okay,
Donnie.
All right.
So, you guys didn't know I'm in. Or you did. All right. The giant boombox.
I think that aged pretty well.
And Felicia saying, "Can I use your VCR? I want to dub a tape." Which actually I forgot when I watched last night. I laughed. I think the body shaming with the whole Janet Jackson, Freddie Jackson. It's still a funny bar.
Nah, that's a weird.
So what we're talking about is Debbie Nia Long sets up Smokey with her friend, who tells Smokey that she looks like Janet Jackson.
Right.
And then when she arrives on the scene, she's a little heavy, and Chris Tucker takes her hair out and basically just disses her to her face.
Right.
It's like the one mean-spirited scene in the movie is the weird thing.
Yeah, and it's like, ooh, we didn't need that.
Yeah.
I also think, to come back to the angel dust scene, I also think a lot of the Mexican accents in this are unnecessary. We didn't need to do all that.
Yeah.
And there are a couple moments where I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
We didn't have to pull this in, especially because so much of this movie is about complicating the way that we think and talk and depict folks living in the hood. It's like we don't have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're kind of like easy jokes that are low hanging. I have also something that aged the worst: how fucking frail the weed looks.
It's true, that's actually a good point. I think you notice it especially when he goes to sell it to the two dudes in the car, two dudes, Hector and Hector's friend, who Smokey doesn't like. But
they're like 20 sacks that look like thimbles.
Yeah. It looks like he's going to sell a plastic bag to them. It just looks like he's holding an empty plastic bag. It's just like...
So I'm gonna go with the body shaming thing, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it's a weird scene. I think it's a weirdly
It's still kind of a funny line, though. I'm not gonna lie, but it it gave me pause when I was watching it in 2017.
But it's also it's like she's not unattractive, so
the
joke doesn't scan too.
Right.
On that note, we're gonna take a smoke break. Just kidding. We're gonna go to a break, and when we come back, we're gonna hit the half-ass internet research corner, heat check, Apex Mountain, and who won the movie.
This episode is supported by State Farm. Think about your first reaction after you have an accident. What do? You scream, "Oh no," or "Man, why did this happen?" On the flip side, let's say you buy a new car or you lease a new car. Get in there and it smells great and you're like, "Man, this is awesome." But just remember, really the only words you need to remember are like a good neighbor. State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to somebody. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. One resolution you can easily start on right now: save money. And all you have to do is switch to Mint Mobile. For a limited time, their wireless plans are $15 a month when you buy a 3-month plan. And it's not just the price that makes Mint Mobile so great. They got some other stuff. No jaw-dropping monthly bills. No unexpected coverages. Every one of their plans comes with unlimited talk and text, and you still get high-speed data from the nation's largest 5G network, also at a great price. Plus, you can keep your phone. You can keep your phone number. You can keep all your contacts. So why not ditch your overpriced plan? Get this new customer offer. Go to mintmobile.com/rewatchables. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. TurboTax experts make all your moves count, filing with 100% accuracy and getting your max refund guaranteed. So whether you're, I don't know, what are you doing, movie fans? Are you auctioning off opening night Q&A tickets? Are you selling movie memorabilia that you found, some old Blockbuster video stand posters? Did you start a movie podcast of your own? Whatever you're doing, switch to TurboTax and make your moves count. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Experts only available with TurboTax Live. This episode is brought to you by Royal Caribbean. It's so hard to choose what kind of vacation you want. Beach, island hopping, hiking, culture. What about choosing Royal Caribbean and going on all the vacations at once? You could test out your surfing skills. You can go on multiple onboard pools. I mean, think about it. If you go island hopping to a jaw-dropping range of Caribbean destinations, including the Bahamas, Bermuda, Jamaica, Mexico, many more, you can hike a Jamaican jungle. You can climb an Alaskan glacier. You can sail to Europe. You can snorkel along colorful reefs, jump off a waterfall, go jet skiing. You can do it all. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Visit royalcaribbean.com to learn more.
All right, we're back. Half-ass internet research corner. I'm just going to read a bunch of shit I got from the internet, and you guys can just interject whenever, comment. The movie was shot on director F. Gary Gray's old block, where he lived in junior high school, 126 in Normandy.
Aww.
And the scene where Debo knocks out Red, the aforementioned scene, actually, is the house the director grew up in. In front of the house that he grew up in.
Has F. Gary Gray ever talked about whether he... I know he said that, like, loosely Friday is based on his impressions of his neighborhood. Yeah. But was he ever out for $200 to somebody, or did he ever know somebody like Debo?
He directed it, but didn't write. I mean, it's mostly a cue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, F. Gary Gray, this is not half-ass internet research. He directed It Was a Good Day video from Ice Cube. So that's kind of how he had directed a couple Cube videos, and that's how they were connected. The neighborhood itself, it's a Crip neighborhood, which is why there's nothing red in the movie. Like, they didn't want to draw the ire of the local gangs. And pretty much all of the clothes were bought at the Slauson swap meet.
Yeah, used to go there.
John Witherspoon, who played the father, said they all got paid around $5,000 each.
Dang.
Some of that was, didn't he say a lot of that was out of Cube's pocket?
How does that work now? Do they get residuals now?
Right.
Somebody's getting some residuals from it?
I don't know. I mean, this is a $3.5 million budget, I believe, and it made $27 million. But I think originally the budget was not going into actors because they were all mostly unknowns.
Right.
Yeah.
It just seems like the sort of movie that John Witherspoon should be able to eat out on for the rest of his life.
Right.
Yeah.
Dang.
He pretty much does.
I mean,
Kathleen Bradley, who played Miss Parker, the curvy neighbor from across the street, was the first black Barker beauty.
Oh, wow.
Bob Barker beauty on Price is Right.
Dang.
And was spotted there by a casting
icon.
director. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Bob Barker.
Goals.
Smokey in the movie drives a shitty 1976 Ford Pinto.
Love that Pinto. That Ford Pinto is the best character in the movie. That car. If you really look at just individual shots of that car, that is the ugliest car that has ever been in a movie.
Yeah, well, apparently F. Gary Gray thought the same because he saw it on Western Avenue, he said, and instantly he knew it had to be Smokey's car.
Oh man.
And he said he actually, like the lock and shit. He just added that in post, which makes it even funnier.
Because the bit they give the car is that and the car backfiring all the time. But to me, the best shot of that car is like after they leave the store where the crackhead gets them to get Smokey to buy a 40 for him, and it's just the one slow shot of the car in the movie where Smokey's parking in front of Craig's house. And it's the one time you get a long shot of that car and you realize how deeply fucked up it is. And you just wonder how this car possibly works. And it just makes the rest of the movie feel so real.
Yeah.
That he is a broke guy who drives a truly broken car.
Agreed.
I just really relate to that. I grew up driving a 1989 Nissan Pathfinder. I was born in 1987. You do the math on that.
Hannah, I think you mentioned earlier how much of the film was improvised. Well, apparently Chris Tucker wasn't originally in the "You Got Knocked the Fuck Out" scene.
Oh.
He just ran in the shot.
That's the Chris Tucker.
And said, "You got knocked the fuck out."
All the more reason nobody else could have done that role.
Was the scene originally just the crackhead then doing his part? The I don't kill, I steal, and he just.
Yeah, it must be.
Dang, Chris Tucker is a legend.
Chris Tucker is a legend. And then finally, Anthony Johnson, who played Izal, the crackhead, said he had a brother and sister actually on crack that he used for inspiration. It's kind of dark.
That is very dark.
But, you know, it maybe lent to a more compelling performance by him.
Yeah. I did a little half-ass internet research
Yeah,
myself.
bring it.
According to my trusted source and the trusted source of teens everywhere, Wikipedia, Craig's situation of being fired on his day off was allegedly based on Cube's cousin, who at the time was working for UPS. And I realize this comes from Wikipedia, but I believe it because UPS and USPS, which I will not leave out of this, are evil organizations. And so I believe that they would fire a hardworking black man on his day off.
Yikes. Somebody got beef with the mail.
No, listen.
Is this time for a stamps.com ad?
Oh, man.
So let's go on to the best heat check performance by a role player, the Dion Waiters Award. And this is a movie, it's going to be hard to narrow it down. We haven't even really mentioned, we've talked about Tiny Lister as Debo. We've talked about John Witherspoon. We talked briefly about Bernie Mac. We haven't really talked about Faison Love that much, or Paula J. Parker, who plays Joy. Or we talked about Regina Kingsley a little bit, but there's Stanley, there's Chris, Lil Chris.
Yeah.
Even Smokey's mom, I thought, was just in a couple scenes, but asking her to buy cigarettes or just like talking on the
make
phone.
it enough.
It obviously can't be Craig or Smokey because they're the
of course,
principals.
of course.
So role players.
Yeah, this is a tough one because there's so many to choose from. I think before this, I would have said Joy just because I love her scene so much and it's been very iconic in the way that I speak to people.
Damn.
But, well, you know, jokingly, of course. But no, I rewatched this and John Witherspoon is it for me, specifically because of the scene when he's talking about the gun. He's like, you know, this doesn't make you a man.
Right.
Like, you know, you fist fight, like you win or lose, you stay alive, whatever. All that just felt
Are
like
you,
a
are
slight...
you Are you queuing up Charity's John Witherspoon
I wasn't, but I could happily be. In
Sorry
fact,
to cut you off.
no. It feels a little after school, especially, right? But it just like, you know, he's feeling himself, he goes for it, and like, I'll allow it.
It's red, man.
Why red?
I just think that's the most thankless role. Like your job in that movie at that point is to get beat up and clown for the whole movie. Yeah, you're just the victim for the whole movie.
But he plays it well.
Yeah, and like I said, the one scene where he just he's crying and he saunters off to his car, sobs in his car, and pulls off. Like it's such a touching scene. It's such a touching scene.
I think John Witherspoon is great. I think Red is great. Or DJ Pooh as Red is great. I'm still gonna have to give it to Debo. Debo has his own music. And Debo persists.
I was gonna say Debo's like iconic. Debo's like a line, you know, like a bar now.
Yeah, it's
like,
almost just like a name
like
for a bully now.
Right,
Like you got Debo.
Debo is so iconic that I can't help but watch The Dark Knight, which is itself an iconic movie, and think, why is Debo bullying police officers on the cruise on the boat?
Wait, Debo's in The Dark Knight?
Yeah, the Tiny Lister is the prisoner who throws the detonator off the ship in The Dark Knight.
Say
and I can never watch that scene without being like, why is Debo
up to?
Debo moved to New York, or Debo moved to Gotham, got arrested, and then became part of the Joker's plot to destroy Gotham. That's how iconic Debo is.
We'll give it to Debo. Yeah.
All right.
All right, so Apex Mountain, which means, you know, like, is this the peak of their career? Cube. No, right?
No,
it's not. But it's
close.
But
it's a
so
memento of the best of Cube.
You know, like Cube obviously went on to do Barbershop, Three Kings, multiple Barbershops, multiple Kevin Hart movies. Has he made a better movie than Friday?
No.
So this might be his apex as an actor.
What's the thing? His
Three Kings is really good, but you know he's like not a main.
But, right, I was gonna, this is Cube's movie.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, in a constitutional sense, it's hard to say that because performance-wise, it's so effective as a Chris Tucker vehicle.
Right.
Right.
Well, you know, like Barbershop actually is low-key really, I think, pretty good.
No, I love
Oh,
Barbershop.
yeah.
Yeah. Beauty Shop, Barber, sure. I don't know. I think this movie, it's still not Cube's commercial peak and it's not his stardom peak, but it is like the peak of Cube balancing all the weird elements of his career. Him being like a sort of more realistic gangster figure and also being like a softer comedy type.
Right.
And this is sort of it's the crux. It's the crux of every angle that Cube has ever done.
Well, it's like the pivot point kind of, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it holds like his multitudes the best.
Right, and it's the one movie where he nails all of his multitudes.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So, Chris Tucker, then, the question would be, do you think he's better in Friday than he is in the Rush Hour movies or The Fifth Element?
Oof.
Is this... I mean, again, we mentioned that all of them were in their early 20s
Yeah.
at this point, so it's hard to say someone's apex... It's cruel maybe to say their apex was that early in their life, but did Chris Tucker get better? People do love the fuck out of Rush Hour.
I think Rush Hour 2, Chris Tucker is better than Friday, Chris Tucker.
I'll allow that.
I think he's obviously leading that movie more, and he's hamming it up in a way. He's hamming it up 10 degrees higher than he's hamming it up in Friday. And I just, if anything, on the strength of that outtakes credit sequence for Rush Hour 2 and him ranting about gefilte fish on an airplane, like I don't know. To me, that's peak.
Should we give it to John Witherspoon then? Since we kind of stunned.
That's the thing, John Witherspoon has such a...
I mean, he's been in a ton of movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even begin to assess a career like
And he
that?
was the dad on the Wayans Brothers show. Just a good show.
And he's granddad on the Boondocks, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
But no, I think this is Pete Witherspoon.
Oh, man, I'll wait till you come out.
Boy, bring your ass off up in here. What you talking about? You wait till I come out. I smelled your shit for 22 years. Now you can't smell mine for 5 minutes. Shut the door.
Yeah.
Him talking
I mean,
about
the
hot
bathroom
balls,
scene,
yeah.
the food scene, the guns. Yeah. I feel comfortable with
we
that.
gotta
I
give
might
him
reassess this
he
later.
taught Ice Cube how to be a man. He taught Ice Cube how to be a man. He didn't need a gun to be a man. All he needed was his fist to be a man.
All right, moving on. We have unintentional comedy and unanswerable questions. I didn't have anything for those categories. It is a comedy. There's not really any unintentional comedy unless you guys saw anything. Unanswerable question is maybe like, does Debo come back and beat their asses later? But there were sequels, so I guess it kind of, which I didn't watch.
My unanswerable question is like, why would somebody steal that many boxes? Like enough boxes to get.
I love that the movie does not answer the question. One,
is it even
whether Craig is guilty of stealing the boxes, and two, was he trying to build a treehouse?
Exactly. Like why? It's fine. I don't need those, but I'm just saying like that is a question that is never.
It's
addressed.
great. Yes. I kind of love that the movie refuses to answer whether he did it and why he would steal boxes.
I also like it, and we kind of talked about it in the beginning, how Craig might be kind of on the straight and narrow, but he's not like a square. He is a dude that would, for no reason, steal some boxes. Like, just on some dumb shit, right? So
Fair.
Okay, so nitpicks. Picking nits. Chris Tucker smoking weed. It doesn't exactly look right to me. He doesn't exactly inhale the weed, and I think it's kind of funny that Craig's, the supposed non-smoker, actually looks like he's smoking weed.
Yeah.
He smokes it, he holds it, he inhales it, he exhales it. Every time you see Chris Tucker smoking weed in the movie, he's holding the smoke in his mouth, which is the telltale sign of a non-smoker. Did that bother any of you?
I mean, I'm a non-smoker. It also, Chris Tucker definitely.
It wasn't so bad that it kind of like looked.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's not like that off-putting, but it was noticeable that when Craig takes the joint, he's like leans back.
Yeah. That, I mean, the first time I watched this movie, I'd never smoked before.
Yeah.
So it didn't strike me as strange. I think watching it now, as a more mature person, I was like, oh yeah. But again, not to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe this.
Right. It's a small one.
Yeah, definitely.
Here's another one. I think there's a voiceover from Cube like in the beginning, and then it comes back in the middle, but I don't understand why there's only 2 places.
It is weird, especially in the middle.
Yeah.
What is the voiceover in the middle?
It's when they're going to rob the house next door, and he's like, Smokey always getting me into shit.
Yeah, it's weird because I forgot the one in the beginning. And see, right, when that happens in the middle of the movie, he's like, wait,
what?
We're
doing this?
This is a movie with voiceovers in it?
Yeah.
Is this a detective noir? Like, what's going on? You're right. That is a weird moment in the movie. Especially because it doesn't come back then after that.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's kind of like they forgot to cut it. So we talked about Chekhov's gun and how in the hour mark it kind of flips to getting a little serious, and John Witherspoon's speech. Actually, F. Gary Gray talked about it after the movie. He said, "In Friday, I wish there was more of a transition to the message. It seems the movie crashes into that moment. You're experiencing all these fun moments, and then all of a sudden there's this message. It grounds the movie, but the execution is inelegant." And I think that's a very accurate description of how the movie does, as Hannah said, pivot kind of to like a after-school special when the gun is produced and the drive-by, and it kind of does start to veer into like, you know, away from what makes it so great in the first hour. Do you agree or disagree, Justin?
I think the events in the movie could stay the same. The thing that makes it feel after schooly is John Witherspoon's speech.
Your mother and I never would have moved in this neighborhood if we had known you need a gun to walk down the damn street.
You know how it is around here.
Oh, no, son, that's not the way it is. You kids today are nothing but punks. Sissified. So quick to pick up a gun. You're scared to take an ass whipping. This one makes you a man. When I was growing up, this was all the protection we needed. You win some, you lose some. But you live to fight another day.
Like, I think they just needed to find a different sort of acted instead of spoken vehicle for John Witherspoon to demonstrate, and not a flashback. Dear God, I don't want a flashback to make up aged down John Witherspoon fighting somebody and losing a fight in black and white. But they needed to find an acting way to demonstrate that, and then in the end, when Cube is confronting Debo, for him to think on that, maybe with like a pensive look on his face before he drops the gun and instead decks Debo in the face. Like that, they needed to do it that way. It needed to be a scene as opposed to a speech.
Right.
I didn't mind it that much. Yeah. But that's just because I love John Witherspoon giving that speech. So if anyone else had done it, I would have been.
I mean, I understand also that it was kind of needed to make to move the plot, but I felt like they didn't need to be a drive-by. Like a drive-by where they were Uzis spraying and like jumping on top of cars, and it's just like
that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie though, because it does feel it feels sharp, and it maybe feels ill-advised because of how it's framed and set up. But I don't know. I do like that there is very suddenly in this laid-back stoner movie a gun battle.
Right. I guess it's just a reminder
at
that
night in pitch black. It's like so poorly lit. I don't know. It just adds another dimension to the movie at the last minute.
I get a reminder that shit is still real, I guess, and stuff could go down at any moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then final nitpick on my part, I think maybe you guys disagree. I found it a little. Did you guys think that Nia Long as Debbie would be that attracted to Craig, where he didn't really? Like maybe she kind of like harbored some feelings to him before the events of the movie, because it seemed like she was already kind of, but. He didn't really have to do much to like win her over. I mean, I guess he knocked out Debo.
Why are we
I'm just curious what you make of it.
Yeah, that
conveniently written into the script by Cube.
Right. I was like, I see what you're doing here. Fine. I think the idea that if there are people who have like been sharing space with each other in this way, like know each other from the neighborhood, like there's some like prior existing relationship there that would then blossom into something else. Sure, I believe that. Do I believe that over the sequence of this one day, out of nowhere, Nia Long suddenly no.
Yeah, that element of the ending of the movie feels very unearned. It feels so abrupt.
It's a very clear reminder that, like, a man wrote this movie, not just any man. Ice Cube wrote this movie. You know
what's weird? It's that it feels unearned, even though the ending is not they make out and go home together immediately. It's just Nia Long saying, "I'll call you tomorrow," but even that feels unearned.
It's like, what's she calling you? What does she want to talk to you about?
First time screenwriter. Actually, one. Maybe nitpick, and this might have gone in what age the worst. What do you guys think about Felicia and the By Felicia? Not By Felicia, but Felicia the character. Just kind of like a lot of 90s movies have just like a roving crackhead.
Yeah.
Roving crackhead.
I mean, we talked about
it too. It has the dude.
But there's a specific like weird like a light-skinned crackhead woman in like a lot of different movies. I feel like just kind of like comic relief / pathos. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a weird way
Just
that
like
there's
begging
like
for money. And
and also weirdly kind of not exactly, but a little bit sexualized.
Exactly.
Like there's a weird undertone there, definitely. I think my nitpick with that is actually not even the existence of her character, which like feels so iconic at this point that it's weird to think of the movie without her, but it's the spelling of Felicia, which, as they have it spelled, is Felisha. And so whenever people will write out by Felicia, which is very common now for all sorts of reasons that we don't have to get into, they're spelling it wrong.
Yeah.
So it just, just a question there. Why?
They should check the IMDb and get the spelling
Yes,
correct.
exactly. Before
They should do half-ass internet research is what they should do.
All right, coming to the end here, close to the end, would this movie have been better with Danny Trejo?
Wait,
Yeah.
This is a late addition to the rewatchable
category.
man.
questionnaire.
This movie-
I went back and forth on this because
He could have been Hector, maybe.
yeah, I feel like the obvious choice, if like you just saw all the characters and nobody had been cast yet of where to put Danny Trejo, would be as Debo, but like you can't take out Tiny Lister. So
Yeah,
So-
Danny Trejo's not big enough to be.
yeah,
Debo. So I'm gonna say no, but
Yeah, I'm with you.
yeah, no,
Consensus.
sorry, Danny.
now best quote. I'm not even gonna read all the fucking quotes I wrote down. I think we're just gonna have to say what our favorite quote is because there's like I could be sitting here reading for 15 minutes.
So one for me, just personally in my life, is the obvious. You ain't gotta lie, Craig. Just amazing.
Said by Joy.
Hello?
Who the fuck you go to the show with last night?
I didn't go to the show last night.
You ain't got to lie, Craig. You ain't got to lie.
Ain't nobody lying.
Said by Joy when she accuses, Craig of engaging in infidelity in some way. The thing is, that scene is so much funnier because I rewatched it, as an adult and noticed that she has a whole ass man in the bed with her when she says it. So, like, not only is she being like dramatic and saying this like, amazing line, but she also is literally being, a hypocrite. So there's that. And then the very last Smokey line, when he's like, allegedly going to go to rehab or whatever for weed, which is a hilarious concept. But he just goes and kind of faces the audience directly and just says, like, I was just bullshitting. And, like, it just brings everything together in a way where you're like, oh, it kind of bursts the sort of after-school specialty-ness of it. And I love that.
My favorite bit in the whole damn movie is when it's one of the scenes when I think it's after Debo's punched Red in the face and Red sulked off. And Smokey is talking to Craig. He's like, man, I got mind control over Debo. He be saying something, and I'll be quiet.
When he leave?
But then he leave, and I'll be talking again.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I think Smokey has so many that it's hard for me to pick one. I'm just gonna go with, and you know this, man. and like You Ain't Gotta Lie, Craig, and like by Felicia, these have all lived on in memes and are useful today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in other Chris Tucker movies, it's weird. Like so many little bits and body language things he does in this movie, he carries over to the Rush Hour movies. And
I'd be remiss too. We mentioned the Bernie Mac R.I.P. pastor scene, but the call and response between twin is an amazing part. So yeah, I mean, best quote. They're all best quotes.
How do you?
How do you choose? So we'll just award it to all of them. Final question: who won this movie?
Chris Tucker.
Chris Tucker.
Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
To the point that it pains me, like watching this movie over the weekend, it pains me that Chris Tucker's career is just not in the shape that it should be.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit because there was Next Friday. There was Friday After Next, both starring Mike Epps. Mm-hmm. And then there's apparently Last Friday been in the works or like at least hoped for the last few years. But, Chris Tucker, any interview you watch with original Friday cast members, they all say it's because of Chris Tucker that there's no Last Friday.
Yeah.
And, his pay scale went up really high. And I think in his defense, he probably doesn't want to fucking play a weed smoking delinquent at age 40, whatever he is. I mean, they could obviously write a different, the evolution of his character, but
right, what people want from this character is probably not what he wants to do at this stage in his career. Right.
They should do a gritty reboot of Friday.
Shut up. Absolutely not.
Did you guys watch
Christopher Nolan's Friday?
Next Friday and Friday After Next? Because
I watched Next Friday.
I watched
but
Next Friday.
Not Friday After Next.
Which is bad enough that I did not watch Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then there was an animated series.
No.
Which I watched like 2 seconds of, and it was so
I
bad
don't know her.
that I couldn't.
I don't know
Yeah,
her.
right.
Do you think there should be another Friday?
No, I'm
And
very
Chris Tucker
much...
actually in recent interviews has kind of like cryptically suggested. I mean, it's funny
The
because
pay scale going down now.
well, I was gonna say it's funny because they want to make a Rush Hour 4 too, and that's also something that Chris Tucker's been on the fence on, and Jackie Chan is like the Ice Cube in that scenario, trying to get Chris Tucker to.
Right.
So here's the thing.
Chris Tucker's a weird motherfucker.
I would 1,000% take Rush Hour 4
over Last Friday.
Yeah,
same.
because it's just like, again, it's the dynamic. Just by virtue of age, I'm less confident in how you would build a Friday movie around 2017 Chris Tucker and Ice Cube. Whereas I think Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker could still get it.
Could reprise an older, like a more mature version. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's something that's kind of quintessentially youthful about the original Friday that I think is gonna, it's gonna be weird for 45-year-olds to be sitting on the porch.
Rush Hour is totally down for somebody.
Do you have kids now? Like, do you still smoke? Do you hide it from them? Like, it's
I mean, it
a lot
could be
of
like
questions.
like a creative rewriting of their, or as I was saying, an evolution of their characters. Like maybe Smokey's now on the straight and narrow, and Craig's a pothead. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the reason that people enjoy, or what people want from sequels, is frequently like an extension of the original story that they fell for. The original characters that they loved. And I think in order to make it work, you'd have to change it so much that it wouldn't work for audiences in the same way.
So let's just leave it be Friday.
Right.
Yeah.
Rush Hour 4, though. Just don't make the same mistakes as Lethal Weapon 4. Don't make those mistakes and you'll be okay. Don't make the same mistakes as Lethal Weapon 4.
On that note, on behalf of Justin Charity and Hannah Giorgis, this is Donnie Kwak signing off for The Rewatchables.
Hey, I know you don't smoke weed. I know this. But I'm gonna get you high today.